everyone. I am calling the special superintendent search meeting for Tuesday, May 30th to order. Before we get started, I had a request from our attorney to speak on something specific. Mr. Kroppenbacher?
Yeah, this is part of the meeting. Members of the board, I received midweek last week a preliminary background report on each candidate. This does not involve a complete background check. I deliberately started looking into it and made requests for the actual records from school districts on two of the candidates where issues were raised. I did not forward this to you, one, because it was the practice of FSBA not to let them get out. It's all public, so if you want it, I've gone through everything. I just have to redact some stuff on like Social Security stuff and stuff. There were two candidates who had two issues, but as of now, I wouldn't say that any candidate should be disqualified because I don't have the benefit of telling you that I verified what the heck's been said. I'm reading a press report, which I don't want to rely on. I'm reading an investigation in one case. I'm reading a letter in another case from professional practices saying they closed the file. I don't know what got referred, what the district did. So I'm letting you know there are issues there. I will forward this stuff to you, but I would not allow it to color your judgment at this point in evaluating candidates, because I think in fairness to all of them, we need to see the complete file. And that's, so you know, that's going to happen with all of these candidates, because this report did not include getting the files from each district and doing a deep dive into their employment backgrounds.
Just the next step.
Which is the next step. So with that, I wanted you to have the benefit of that. I'll clean this up and then forward it to you by tomorrow. Again, I'm trying to get you through this rapidly, but I called districts last week asking for these files, and they told me, one told me, well, you have to send us a public records request. Okay, all right, so as soon as I get stuff, I'll be getting it to you all and working with FSBA, but that's where we are on, I think all candidates should be considered equal at this point, because we don't know what we're gonna find on any of these people when we start digging deep.
Well, we did do a preliminary.
We did a preliminary deep drive, but we haven't done what we would call the deep,
Okay.
deep drive.
And just to confirm, out of that preliminary search that FSBA did, only two candidates had things come back that we need to know about. Is that correct?
Yes, unless you
Okay.
consider traffic tickets relevant, which personally I don't, since all right. But the reality is there were only two things that popped up that you'd want a more thorough look at.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to emphasize, I don't think it's fair to disqualify anybody at this point because we don't have the total information. You should consider them all equally.
Okay. Thank you. We do have two additional things to do before we even start this conversation. So if we can rise for a moment of silence and now move to the Pledge of Allegiance. You said immediately, I follow directions. Thank you. And I will go ahead and lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Seated. Okay, so the next item of the agenda is the approval of the list of finalists for the superintendent and the next steps for interviews. FSB, would you be leading us through this process? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. And we're actually going to be doing 3 things today. The first thing will be selecting the finalists. Second thing, we will be talking about the interview schedule for Monday and Tuesday of next week. And the third thing involves the interview schedule, which is the Monday public interview where the board will sit like you are there, and there'll be the applicant sitting here. And so I have your strategic plan. I have the 5 categories of your strategic plan that we can assign 1 category to each of the 5 people, and then I'll work with you over the coming days to come up with the questions that you want to ask in that public interview related to your strategic plan category. Okay? So at this point, let me also go back to finalizing a point that Mr. Kruppenbacher made. There's actually 3 levels of background searches that your final selected candidate will go through. We've already done that first level, which is what you guys were just talking about. After you name finalists tonight, first thing tomorrow, we reach out to the school districts where they're currently employed. We ask for the personnel file. We ask for everything related to the personnel file. So we'll be getting that between now and when you have your interviews next week. And then when you finally make your selection and there is an offer of job on the table, your personnel office can then do the deepest dive background search, but you can't do that until there's an offer of employment. Okay, so those are the different levels that we go through. But what we have right now are 7 semifinalists, all of whom submitted answers to questions that you all posed, some in written format, some in video format, and I know you've been reviewing those. We have applicant number 4, Dr. Michael Allen. We have applicant number 11, Dr. James Larson. Applicant 13, Dr. Kim Moore. Applicant 14, Terrence Connor. Applicant 15, Dr. Ann Hembrook. Applicant 21, Marcos Murillo. And applicant 25, Dr. Mark Shanoff. So what I'd like to do, Madam Chair, is ask the board members which of these applicants you would like to see the board bring in for an interview. We'll do just as we did last time, where we'll make the little tally marks. Each of you should have one of our tally sheets in front of you so we can follow along. You'll tell me, and then I will repeat them. Ms. Castillo, I remember last time I got one of yours wrong, so let's pay close attention, make sure I get them all correct. Is there anyone who wants to offer to go first?
I'll go first. Great, thank you.
I would like to put forward candidate number 4, Dr. Michael Allen, candidate number 15, Dr. Ann Hembrook, and candidate number 25, Dr. Mark Shanoff.
All right, let me repeat those to you. I have 3 applicants, number 4, 15, and 25. Thank you.
I can go next. I would like to move forward applicant 25, Mr. Shanoff, Dr. Shanoff. Applicant 4, Dr. Allen. Applicant 13, Dr. Moore. And applicant 15, Dr. Hembrook.
All right, I have 4 for you, Madam Chair. Applicants number 4, 13, 15, 25.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go next.
Ladies
I was
first.
gonna have it.
Ladies first, here we go. I'll do applicant number 4, Dr. Allen. Applicant number 14, Terrence Connor. Applicant number 15, Dr. Hembrook. And applicant number 25, Dr. Shanoff.
All right, I have 4 for you. I have applicant number 4, 14, 15, 25.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to go next, and in due spirit, I did take quite a few notes, and so I just want to kind of explain it for purposes of, for the public audience and everybody to know. In no particular order, I'm just going from left to right. One of them is number 11, Dr. Larson. One thing that I liked about Dr. Larson, when I saw the video, we talk about a lot of buzzwords, reform, things like that. But when he was very specific and said the flipped classroom during the pandemic should be brought back into the norm, I thought that was kind of interesting to see somebody making a suggestion. The other thing that he brought up with, and I kind of disagree, but I still like the fact that he had the bravado to say it, was flexible scheduling. So that's something that I haven't really thought about before. And he says it doesn't have to be like universities, but it's the point that he's willing to push the boundary. So that's the part that was impressive. And to be honest with you, I disagree with flexible scheduling the way he brought it up. But I appreciate the fact that he wasn't afraid to say, this is the reform. Because it's too easy just to say, I believe in reform, but to not give, specific details. The other thing that he mentioned that really stood out was he said, the virtual reality board. He goes, imagine the Gettysburg Address literally coming to life. And so to me, I felt that passion as like that educator, because sometimes when you become an administrator, you get so far removed from the classroom, you kind of forget the spirit of why you were there. So I do appreciate the fact that he was literally, drawing that picture down. And then he talked about, Down syndrome. There was a king and queen at his high school. They conducted roundtables. That was an issue with us. We had an ESE focus group, so he has personal experience with that, and it's not like the other ones don't. And so those were some of the good things that I liked about that. And then another thing that he had mentioned at the very end, which to me is kind of singing my tune, is that he made sure that he monitored, by carrying out fidelity, holding people accountable. And I think there was even a quote, he goes, there's really no time for hurt feelings. And now we kind of want to do that respectfully, but be able to, because I remember there was a contract they were renewing as a board, and one of them was, they said, you're not allowed to use this as a evaluation tool. And like, we were afraid to hold people accountable, and I think that in order for us to grow, we have to be able to hold people accountable. The other one that I liked was number 15, Dr. Hembrook. On my own assessments, I was really impressed the way Marion County's board created a culture during the pandemic, and they were open to parent comments and things like that. And so I really felt the vibe. So I know she may not be part of the board, but to me, it's part of that culture that wasn't afraid to say, hey, these were things that were happening, and this is what we're doing to address them. And again, I felt her vibe, like her energy, even on the video. That's like, she goes, I'm excited about the opportunity. She went to UCF. So even though she's from Marion County, she's kind of a local product, she understood it. She says, we always put students' needs first. We do research, technology, innovation. And she goes, at one point, she had to perform a district-wide analysis, because it's easy to say when I get elected as superintendent or get appointed that I'm gonna do an audit and figure out what's going on. But she actually performed that and had to do that and make recommendations for academic programs. So she has experience doing an assessment. And then she even mentioned augmented reality, gamification. Again, those are, to me, it's so easy just to use a buzzword, but it's more difficult to lay out a plan on the table. So the fact that she was talking about that really helped. She was also a gifted teacher. A lot of times we talk about ESE, we forget that ESE is also gifted students, because it's not just students with disabilities, it's students that are excelling, and making sure that they're on track. So, again, because I wrote, and also, this is also a cute thing too, she grew up in Spanish. She went to Spain in Santa Monica and actually learned Spanish. And she even talked about the ELL programs and having classroom buddy translators, incorporating paraprofessionals in strategy design, which is very important, because a lot of times we think teachers are the end-all be-all, but a lot of paraprofessionals, especially in the ESOL, are part of that program. And so the fact that she acknowledges the ESP, and to me, that was very, very impressive. So, and she's worked at a district, and she told me that there was a high school, she was an administrator, where there was admin turnover and low morale. So she has experience with that too. And then I think the last quote, she says, we can learn to read versus reading to learn. And that's a big thing for elementary students, it's like, being able to comprehensively put together those words. So to me, and then she did focus groups and student first approach. My only concern, but she's still a finalist because I'm not going to get out, was again, when Dr. Larson was talking about, I'm willing to hold people accountable, let's do it that way. She goes, I didn't like, you can't hurt culture or morale with change. And that part is like, no, if you need change, sometimes you got to be willing to pull up the apple cart. And that was my only thing. I was like, man, this seems like top part. And maybe she just said that, and maybe she's willing to change that a little bit. But the point is, I don't want too much consensus. And like, again, there's a respectful way to bring about change. But if there's a right way to do it, but if everyone else around it doesn't want to change, doesn't want to do the extra work. I have a small business myself, and sometimes we have to do things that we don't like doing. We have to get out of our comfort zone. So you can't always take a poll and see how your employees want to do before you do something. Sometimes you have to be a leader and make some difficult decisions. But I'm still moving her forward because I liked everything else. You know what I mean? But if she gets to become a finalist, I would like to push her buttons and say, okay, well, name a situation where you're willing to not take 100% consensus. You know?
Interestingly enough, that's the reason why I chose her, because of what she said about culture. Because I think culture is very important. So we chose the same person, but
Yeah.
for different reasons.
Yeah, but I think but that's a healthy discussion.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
of
what I mean?
course.
So at what point are you willing to make the change to get the district to where it needs to go? And then, I looked at Marcus Murillo, I'm not too excited about it, so I'm not gonna do number 15. So then my last one would be number 25, Dr. Shanoff. And this was somebody that I was equally impressed. When I looked at the paper, and then I looked at him in real life, there's nobody that I can create in a lab that can touch so many checkpoints. This guy talks about, again, you looked at that resume, and I mentioned it before, but I think it bears repeating because it is significant. He was a principal of an elementary school, a principal of a middle school, a principal of a high school. He was chief operations officer at Volusia County, working with transportation and logistics. Bless you, John. And then he gets to Orange County as a chief informational officer and doing with technology. So this guy literally, and we talked about ERP in one of our strategy sessions as being a part of that, he literally has experience on virtually every facet of the district. And he talked about creating an environment that was a multi-sensory experience. Again, because, students learn differently. And again, we're talking about not using it is somewhat a multi-sensory experience, can be a little bit of a buzzword, but it's the fact that, we talked about implementing technology and like virtual reality, other things like that, or just kids learn differently. And some students learn more by reading, some learn by watching videos, some learn by gamification because it's there. And then he's mentioned age-appropriate learning standard, so he was kind of willing to do something like that. And then he also mentioned industry certifications. Because you could tell, this gentleman also has an MBA. So it's not just he has a master's degree in educational leadership, he also has the business side of it. And so I was listening to buzzwords, because I have an MBA as well, and you do as well, Ms. Castillo, is that the fact that now he starts using my language that I understand, business. He was talking about industry certifications, you're offering courses that are economic drivers, how the economy and us should be in sync. Because one of my big issues that I had, respectfully with Dr. Pace, I'm not here to knock her down, but for the life of me, the first thing I thought as a business person walking into Neo City was computer programming. I want to code. I felt like sitting in a corner and writing code, and there was no computer programming offered at the school. They said, oh, there's just computer programming in the classes, but not offered as its own standalone program. So to me, that's where the difference of an MBA. An MBA would go in there, walk into Neo City and say, hey, wait a second, we need to have programmers because kids love the program. So this applicant understands where to match the two appropriately. So he also talked about this, he did his homework. He talked about the semiconductor tenant and our status need to prepare to fill them. He knew Neo City was in existence. He said one of our person was Skywater, let's prepare our students for it. So not only did he talk about it as a buzzword, but then he also gave an example on how they two can fit together. So to me, that was just, I'm just ecstatic. And then he even talked about it. Architects need to rethink space from static to dynamic, from furniture space and equipment. It needs to be about student reflection. Everything needs to be about student gains. How do we rearrange our schools to make sure that we have the maximum student learning? And then he even talked about AI and can personalize a learning experience. ESE, he was an ESE student himself, personally. So you talk about somebody that went through that being ESE. And then I think also he was a high school, he was in PE. So you understand, or a gym instructor, or PE. So this guy literally has every touch point. I think it would be an honor for us to begin. I want to actually learn from him. It's like I want him to be able to sit down and actually, tell us, way to do things. And so, again, he just really has a lot of stuff. And so, again, he talks about listening to the troops. He thought about a 90-day thought change program. And he says, and he specifically said, and that's something that some of the other candidates said too, the first 100 days, the 90 days. I like the fact that, when we go to the finalist point, have them lay out, all of them. When we materialize, what would be the 90-day plan? Because, be honest with you, it's going to happen faster than you think when school starts. And so it's nice to be able to look at that. So and he says, what's going well, what can improve? So to me, those are the things that we should really consider. And then in all due respect, one of the reasons why, well, there's a couple of reasons why, I didn't feel comfortable with Dr. Allen's presentation is, number one, we still haven't got the scores back. Because we looked at the second PMI and the first PMI, and we're underperforming versus the state. And he acknowledged it, and I appreciate that, during the strategic plan. He says, I take accountability for that, and I want to see, can we generate results? Now, the timing of it, we don't have the PMI back to see what the, because I think that even I talked to Dr. Reyes earlier today, she was like, well, there's still some students even taking the test, so they haven't finalized that. So to me, it's like, when somebody implements a plan, are they able to execute it? And so to me, that's where there's a little bit of a concern, and there's just a little bit too much reliance on, I live here, I'm from here, and I get that, but this is an emotional appointment. This is me trying to be statistically, what is the best chance to move our students forward? Because in one thing that I saw in the video, well, first of all, it was like a really publicized video. I mean, it looked like community, it looked like community services, edited his video with the check marks and the lighting, and it was almost too prepared. But he mentioned culture of trust and a collaboration with insights. But yet, when Celebration was looking for a new principal, he was a part of the team that went there. And then the parents complained to me, saying that the district made its decision the next day, so it felt like their input wasn't even valued. So it seems like they already had their choice on who they wanted to select as principal, but they kind of went there as window dressing. And I don't think that, the community wants that to be window dressing or checkpoint. They want to truly be heard, and is he willing to take the district to the next level? And that was my concerns, is, if we're truly happy with what we got and we're fine, then we can continue to stay the course. But if I feel in my heart that if we want reform, we want to take it to the next level, I don't see that in the resume as being a visionary leader to take us to the next level. There's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of good stuff, but not a lot of concrete examples on how to actually move us forward, especially in relative comparison to the other candidates that exist. So thank you, Madam Chair, for your.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Can I confirm?
Yes.
I want to make sure we have the right ones. I have 3 for you, Mr. Melanendez. I have applicant number 11, 15, and 25.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Arguello?
Yes, I'm gonna give a vote to Mr. Connor.
Wait, what number is that, Mr. Arguello?
That would be
14.
number 14, yes.
14, thank you.
I think he's the only one who actually answered any of the questions without using platitudes. Read them all many times, read them all this morning again, and he's the only one who actually gives actual plans. So they may be good or bad, but nonetheless, he had the courage to actually put himself out there, make commitments. No one else actually did that. None of the other candidates, as great as they may be, none of them did that. If he had a PhD or an ED, he would certainly be near the top of this in terms of his positioning. The ED hasn't worked miracles for us in this county, so I'm not so sure that that's the biggest issue. In my questions, it was more of an exercise. The actual questions themselves were distraction. The actual exercise was to seek out commitment and frankness, and he's essentially the only one who was frank and who actually answered the questions in mine. I think in our local candidate, the last question was address our culture of conflict. That should have been pretty easy to address our culture of conflict, to say that this exists. But he's the only one who actually talked about strengthening governing practices, revisiting board policies, actually saying things that would need to happen in order to establish trust with our community. All the other ones kind of stroked over it. Clearly, I mean, if he had a terminal degree, then he would be he would be along with all these other people. I think that's the only one I'm going to submit today.
So you're only interested in removing the one forward, is that correct?
Yes.
Applicant number 14. Thank you. So, Madam Chair, when I look at this, applicant number 4 has 3 board members that would like to move Dr. Allen forward. Applicant 11 has 1. Applicant 13 has 1. Applicant 14 has 2. Applicant 15 has 4. Applicant 25 has 4. Applicant 21, I did not have any. So when I look at that, I see applicants 15 and 25 have 4 board members that would like to see those 2 applicants move forward. Applicant 4 has 3, applicant 14 has 2, applicants 11 and 13 each have 1. We have no minimum or maximum. We've prepared a sample schedule for 3, 4, and 5, but again, there's no minimum and no maximum. So we'll start with the 2 applicants that have 4 board members that each want to move them forward. And I don't know if you want to take a vote to see.
Yeah, I think first, if we can, board, and let me know if I'm off.
Sure, no,
base
you're
here.
good.
I think we should determine how many we want to maybe bring in, so that helps us to better establish who moves forward. Does that sound like fair? I definitely don't want to bring 2 in. I will tell you that. That's not. I don't think that's enough of a. I don't think that's enough of a conversation. And I want to see. There's some people that I feel maybe didn't get as many votes, but should still be moved forward just to have it in the mix. That's my personal opinion.
4?
I think 4 is probably a good number.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think, and with all due respect.
Sure.
To me, it's not a numbers game. If you know what you want, this is to help narrow that down. I don't want to waste that person's time either to come in here just to meet a number, and because they have things to do too.
Sure.
They have lives. So just to kind of go through the exercise to go through the exercise. I mean, that may be a good thing because then they can practice interviewing.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
also,
Like if we're not seriously considering that person, I think it's a disjustice to make them a finalist.
I understand your point, but from a HR point of view, from someone who's done interviewing, you might have 2 amazing candidates and one of them's like, all right, well, actually, I'm not interested anymore. And then we're kind of stuck in a weird place.
Well, you can always bring them back.
You do have 4 applicants that at least 2 board members or more are interested in. So that does seem, there is a demarcation line there. If you are interested in 4, we had 2 board members interested in applicant 14, 3 in applicant 4, and then 4 for applicants 15 and 25.
Okay. I think the majority of us, Mr. Melendez, is okay with moving forward with 4, if that's okay with you too.
Well, I'm not okay with it, but I'm okay, but I mean, it's like majority rules.
I know, I'm trying to be as equitable as possible.
Understand.
I'm trying to convince you here.
Yeah, I think, I don't like the idea of 4, maybe 3, to kind of stretch it, but it depends. 4 is, I'm okay with 4, it's not the end of the world. I'm not gonna have a heartbreak over it.
It might win you over. You don't know.
You never know, yeah, you're right, okay, I'm okay with it.
Okay, I think 4 is the number that we're all in agreement with, so definitely 15 and 25.
And then, I mean, looking at the numbers, it would appear to be applicants number 4 and 14.
4, 14, 15, 25?
Correct.
4, who's 14?
Yes, sir.
Terrence Connor.
Connor, okay, I'm okay with that.
And I don't know if you want to maybe take an official vote on that?
Sure. So board, all those in favor of bringing candidates number 15, 25, 4, and 14 to the next level of interviews, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign?
Can you say that again? I felt like the numbers
Oh,
were off
did I
on
do
that.
it incorrectly?
I'll motion to take 4, 14, 15, and 25 as finalists.
I second it.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign? Thank you.
All right,
our candidates.
thank you. So that would be Dr. Michael Allen, Terrence Connor, Dr. Ann Hembrook, and Dr. Mark Shanoff. Okay, perfect. I'm going to ask Mr. Reichert to come up and talk to you about the interview schedule for 4 finalists. In fact, if he gives it to me, I'll hand it out to you
Thank you.
so that you all can see what that will look like.
Keep one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then we'll do the interview questions last.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Messina, and good afternoon, members of the board. I prepared a draft for 4 finalists in advance. I also had one prepared for 3 and 5, just so you would know. We do have, if you'll look to kind of the left column for Sunday, June the 4th, we have identified 3 or 4 hotels. We'll be contacting them tomorrow. I'm planning to come back tomorrow and work with staff to fill in some of the blanks that are still missing. And now that we know we have 4 finalists, we can move forward with that. So we'll be contacting one of those 4 hotels to see if they have rooms available for those from the out of area who would need a room. If we look to the schedule on Monday, June the 5th, with 4 finalists, you can see that you will have your 1.5-hour interview with each finalist here in this room in this format. You can look at the candidate A, which will be our first candidate who submitted their application, and that would be, I don't have my
Dr.
list.
Allen.
Dr. Allen would be A. Mr. Connor would be B.
Correct. C is going to be Dr. Hembrook.
Right.
And D is
would be
Dr. Shanoff.
Dr. Shanoff. So I'll fill in those blanks so you can look at Monday, June the 5th. Your first interview will be with Dr. Allen from 8:30 to 10. And candidates B, C, and D would have school community tours. Certainly candidate B would have what we would refer to as a mini tour to make sure that that candidate is back here in time for their interview with the board at 10:15. Candidates C and D may have a little lengthier tour. If you recall, I think at one of our first planning meetings, we talked about some of the sites that we could work around for tours that we would certainly be able to fit into the time schedule that each of these finalists would have. So we'll move through that day of Monday, June the 5th, following this schedule where you'll have your interviews with all 4, and then the other 3, as you're interviewing, would be out doing a school community tour. We have confirmed that we will have dinner for the 4 finalists and their spouses, FSBA at Valencia College that afternoon from 5 to 6. And then the community meet and greet will be held at the Valencia College or Osceola campus from 6 o'clock to 7:30. I believe that's already been advertised. It's out there. I'm sure with now us identifying the 4 finalists, there'll be additional information coming from public relations or community involvement to address the meet and greet as well. With regard to staff members that might be available for tours to be a tour host on that Monday, I think that maybe there was some discussion about if the board had any recommendations on staff who would maybe be a tour host, that you can maybe get those to Tanya. I don't know if you've done that or not, but if there, at this point, is there any board member who would recommend some staff folks to basically serve as the district tour host? I will say that there are 4, if you recall from your advisory committee, y'all wanted me to ask the advisory committee members if any would be interested in kind of being a community host to partner with a staff host. And we do have 4 individuals, ironically, that volunteered to do that. So we'll match up those 4 with the 4 finalists to be with the staff person. So any input from the board about who you might consider as a staff person to be the tour host?
I think community relations is probably anyone in that team. I think they're really knowledgeable about our but
Okay. It's always good to have someone who knows the community, who can kind of take the back roads, avoid this area during this time of the day, and then we'll pair that person up with a community, one of our 4 community people. And I will tell you that the 4 who did indicate, I'm sorry, I don't have that, but we do have 4, so we'll match those folks up. So that would be our schedule for Monday, the 5th. Again, starting at 8:30, and the last interview would conclude at 4:15. Dinner for the finalists at 5, and then the meet and greet at 6. If we move then to Tuesday, June the 6th, we'll have a light continental breakfast for the finalists from 7:45 to 8:15. Then you would start your 1-hour individual interviews with each finalist, starting at 8:30 to 9:30. There's a 15-minute break we built in. You'll have your second interview at 9:45. You will notice that there are a couple of breaks in the schedules, and I really just took each board member by their district. So started with District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just plugged in the rooms that were sent to me for your one-on-one interviews. So you can kind of look at your schedule and see that some of you may have not straight interviews back to back, but there's a break there. If that schedule maybe is a conflict with anyone, we can certainly maybe work with another board member, but on an initial glance, does that schedule look good for your individual interviews one-on-one for June the 6th?
yes.
So if I stand as correct, just to understand, so on Monday, it's the entire board interviewing all of them, then on Tuesday, it's individuals?
Yes, right. And you have your assigned room based on the schedule, and then we will work to bring the candidates to you during your assigned interview time for that 1 hour.
Is it says at the district office, is it gonna be here? Or somewhere else?
In this room.
Yes, the board sitting as a body will interview each finalist here in this room. And then your one-on-ones on the next day will be based on the rooms that we've got, the conference rooms that we've identified.
Tanya, could we make sure we have a table for the candidate to sit at? Because to stand for an hour and a half
Yeah.
answering questions.
I think, even on the day that we do the individual ones too, a table on that day.
It's like would it be like a workshop instead of this?
It's a little,
It's whatever the board would prefer.
this is daunting. I don't like this.
Yeah.
I like the table and then we're all kind of, my opinion, I don't wanna.
We did that in Pinellas, John, I don't know if you remember.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did. Yeah, we'll work to maybe have an arrangement where the tables are this way for the board to sit behind, and then a table for the finalist out here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good. We'll kind of set up the room that way for.
Just to have it in the, it's open to the public, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah.
And again, again, thank you for kind of bringing up the public. I will say that as the interviews start on Monday, we will be advertising a QR code that the community can access either from your website or wherever they can access it from to provide their input on the finalists as they're being interviewed throughout that day. At the meet and greet, we'll have posters with the QR codes around the area where the finalists will be. So at the end of that evening, the community who comes and attends can provide their input on some of the thoughts, the strengths, or some of the weaknesses they might see in a candidate through that QR code. By around 9 that evening, we'll compile that and send it to the board members around 9 that Monday evening. So you can have Monday evening and even Friday morning to look through some of those comments and input.
Tuesday morning.
I'm sorry,
You said Friday morning.
I'm sorry.
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. So when you go through your one-on-ones, there may be some issues that were brought up from community members that you would like to maybe follow up on during your one-on-one interview. And Andrew, I believe we keep that QR code access up until Monday of the next week, the day before you make your selection.
Sunday night, I'll close it at 9 o'clock.
Okay, so that'll be, again, some opportunities for public input. I will say too to the board members that tomorrow I'll work on developing an individual schedule for you individually for Monday and Tuesday. So if you have trouble following this chart, I'll give you an individual schedule. I'll send that through Tanya for Monday and Tuesday of next week. Okay. Any questions I could respond to at this point?
Interject. The recommendation is not to attend the breakfast or lunches, correct?
No.
Correct.
No, you are welcome to attend the lunches or breakfast. What I advise you was the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General who does the public records does not like the idea of it. The school board attorneys are kind of split on it. It's my opinion. Tanya will be noticing it so that you may all be there. My recommendation to you is you do not talk to each other. You don't congregate each other. You don't stand together and listen to somebody talking to you. You kind of isolate yourself individually, and then you're fine to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So the next matter has to do with the Monday group interview, and that's the one you were asking about there, Mr. Melendez, and we're talking about in this room. You'll have each of the 4 applicants come in for an hour and a half, and each of them would be asked the same questions. We do that intentionally so that the public can compare the answers to each of the same questions. And I've divided and prepared a bank of questions related to your strategic plan. You have 5 areas in your strategic plan. So typically what would happen, since you have 5 areas in your strategic plan, each of you would take one of those 5 areas. I'll give you a bank of questions related to that area. You don't have to use my bank, but they can help you. You and I will converse sometime over the next 2 to 3 days where you'll tell me if you can prepare 5 questions, be prepared to ask up to 5 questions, depending on how long the answers take. So each applicant will get an hour and a half, 90 minutes in an interview. The chair will have a whole script written out for you where you'll identify to the applicant, you have 90 minutes. Questions are divided thematically into our 5 strategic plan areas. Each board member is prepared to ask up to 5 questions, depending on how long you take to answer questions. So if you have somebody who's very verbose, they may only get 3 questions in one area. But it's their job to know they have this many minutes and this many questions, and then part of the interview is how are they managing their time. So I have your 5 areas of the strategic plan, and I'm going to need you guys to help me determine who's going to ask questions in each of the areas. We have academic success, safety security, fiscal responsibility, community engagement. I lost one here, hold on. I'm guessing it has to do with staff. Let me find it.
Talent management.
Talent management, that's it. Yes, ma'am, right here, talent management. So we have academic success, talent management, fiscal responsibility, community engagement, and safety and security. And Madam Chair, I don't know how you want to do this. If you're, as the chair, want to pick one, assign them. If you want to ask people to thumb wrestle for it, I don't know how you want to do this.
I don't want us to thumb wrestle for it, nor do I want to make choices for folks. I will just say that I'm pretty passionate about talent management, but I'm willing to do any of them. And I do see Mr. Melendez has his light on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if we can do it maybe a little bit differently. Like, as I was doing the process of watching videos, I came up with some questions on my own. And I hate to be tunneled into like, okay, I had to only ask about academics. Maybe if we submit to you by a deadline, and if everybody asks the same kind of questions, then maybe we kind of filter the questions out and kind of decipher it. Because my question may not be the same as Ms. Calhoun's or the same as Mr. Arguello's.
We have our personal interview day as well, though.
Yeah, but I want to be able to, like what she said, the personal interview, nobody's going to see it. I want every candidate to have the same opportunity to answer it and be able to publicly vet. You know what I mean? Like personally, yeah, I can do it, but nobody's going to see it, and it's like in a vacuum. It's like it never happened.
I understand. I do think that it's probably cleaner to do it the way that FSBA is suggesting. May I ask a counter offer? Can I counter offer that perhaps you submit your questions and we can add those to the different buckets, and then perhaps you can ask them
Yeah,
after?
maybe there's like one in each bucket or something like that.
Would that be?
That's fine.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you are served in your request, but I do agree with the way that they're doing it. Would that be sufficient, or would that be acceptable to you?
Yeah, because what it may end up being, I can understand it, like if I allowed to see it, one of my questions may fit one of the buckets naturally. And so then that way,
Yeah.
instead of asking some generic question, then I guess I'd like to be able to.
So one in each bucket?
I don't know how many questions you have.
That's, I mean,
I don't know
you
where
could
they
do
all
that
are.
too. You could come up with one in each bucket for each of you.
Okay.
I mean, that's another way.
Okay, but that does mean we have to submit those questions by when, tomorrow?
No, okay, so if I understand what you're saying correctly, there are 5 areas of the strategic plan. Each of you wants to come up with one question in each of the 5 buckets.
That is a suggestion, I don't know.
So that's fine. I just, by Friday, that way if there's any challenges, I can work through them over the weekend to get, because what we try to do is prepare for you almost like an interview worksheet. So it'll say applicant number 4, and it'll have all the questions in the order that they're going to be asked so that you guys can take notes for each of the applicants. And then you'll get one for applicant 11 and one for applicant 15. And so you can take the notes on it. So I just need the questions so that they're written down so that you can write your notes in response to that question. If you do it thematically by your strategic plan, that's fine. If you do it one in each of the strategic plan areas, that's fine too.
How many strategic plan were there total?
I'm sorry?
Oh, there's 5, that's exactly, I like that idea of one in each,
Right, but then does that mean that we don't ask in each of our categories?
No, you get to ask one question in each category.
So you can do one question on talent management, one question academic success, one question safety security, one question fiscal.
That way, instead of me asking 5 security questions.
Community
ask one
engagement.
security question, I have one, and then
Sure.
each board member gets to ask a question that they feel is the most important.
Yeah.
There's exactly 5, so 5 we get one in each.
Okay, it sounds like the board is in agreement with that, yeah, okay.
And so then what I'll do, rather than give you the section of questions related to your thematic area, I will just forward to you the full bank of, I think it's 200 some odd questions. You don't have to use my questions, you can certainly use your own, but if you want to, they're there for your assistance, and not just for the public interview, but you may use some for the private interview as well.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, and just to confirm understanding amongst us and in the public, we're not doing, each person takes a specific portion of the strategic plan. We will either submit our own questions within each area of the strategic plan if we choose to do so, or we can select questions, one question from each one of the strategic plan areas from the questions that you have. Is that everyone's understanding? Yes, okay.
And if I can get them by Friday, 5 p.m.?
Yeah.
Then I can, if I have to make phone calls over the weekend because maybe 2 people have chosen a similar question,
Yeah.
then I try to make it so that the idea is as much variety, as many different types of questions, and also, depending on how questions are written, I try to caution board members, you don't really want to give the answer in the question. You're trying to get the information from the person, not tee them up to answer what you want to hear. So,
Yes.
To protect the integrity of the process and anybody saying anything, are the applicants going to be given the questions ahead of time?
No, sir.
Okay, so you'll give them to the board when they come to the meeting?
Correct.
Okay. Second, are the interviews on television?
Yes.
What steps are being taken to assure that the one applicant can't watch other applicants, and no applicant can get a text message or be alerted to what the
There's a
question-
reason we do it the way we do it
Right.
with the community interviews. They have no opportunity where they're not with some of our tour guides. They have no opportunity to listen, hear, anything like that. I mean, if they've got somebody who's going to be watching a previous interview and texting them, that's an academic, that's an integrity question that we'll have to figure out. But we do everything in our power to maintain, we keep them on the school tours, on the other
Would you
tours.
do me a favor, and I know you know a lot of this, just have our community members watch for any texting.
Sure.
So that.
I think we talked to them about that.
Yeah, we did.
And you have a staff member and a community member. And it's not that they can't do any texting.
No, but-
But the amount of time it would take to get that sort of thing, they won't have, they'll be occupied. That's one reason we set that whole day up the way we do. To kind of keep them away and they have no opportunity to listen, hear, any of it.
And Madam Chair, that day is a work day for people, so our staff really doesn't need to be attending the interviews unless they want to take the day off to do it. I saw a school district once do interviews, and the whole room got packed with staff, and they felt very intimidated by that. They can take a day off, but they can't say, well, I'm gonna go downstairs and watch the interviews. That's not what they're hired to do.
I mean, I think that their supervisors can make that call.
Well,
I don't think
I'm
we need to
being-
direct
Let me
them
tell
for
you, having
that.
lived through it a couple of
Yeah.
times, I'm just bringing it up so
We
everybody knows the
do
rules.
have the ability, and because they're on the TV now, they'll be airing over the whole weekend, throughout the week
Right.
and the weekend. So people will have an opportunity to watch them. They don't have to watch them live. And that's why we leave that QR code open until Sunday night.
I'm not opposed, just so that my person, I'm not opposed to people from the public.
I think he means like staff members specifically, but I think their supervisors can do whatever they think is best for that team. I am not gonna tell a supervisor what to do with their team, me personally.
Supervisor does not have the authority to allow them to come sit in this meeting. That's not work-related.
Okay,
It's time they would have to take off.
okay. Thank you.
So at this time, I'll answer any questions.
I don't have any questions, team.
Pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I'm looking forward to your list of questions that I'll get by Friday at 5. I'll be working on putting those into sort of the little script that I'll share with everyone, and we'll get those QR codes for community. Yes,
And you
ma'am.
are sending us sample questions too, though.
I'm sorry?
You are sending us the sample questions too, though, for each category.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
yeah, yes, ma'am. And just so you know, Sunday evening, when your out-of-town people will be arriving, I'll be at the hotel as well, greeting them, making sure they have everything they need. We'll be here, the three of us will be here Monday and Tuesday the whole time. You all have our cell numbers. You can text us and say, I'm in room such and such, can you bring me water? Whatever it is, we're going to be here, and we'll be ready to make sure that all of the finalists have everything that they need, and all of the board members and staff have everything that they need.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Melendez, you have a question, and then I want to make sure that if there's anybody here for public comment, they have a chance to speak.
Correct, and it's not to the FSBA. I want to acknowledge that the Osceola Magic is here in attendance. I let them know that it's a superintendent board meeting, there's still public comment, that maybe if they can place them on the agenda next time, or with your permission, if they're here, they can address
They
it.
can
They
make
would
a
like to
public
do a
comment.
partnership. And
Yeah, we have
so if
a,
you guys want to come up and.
well, is this a background or is it a?
No, it's not about the superintendent selection
Okay.
committee. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm saying. I'm willing to allow
Okay.
it. No, it's not the superintendent selection committee.
It's
I want to
fine.
acknowledge them to be able to put on the following.
Yeah,
on the
you can
following
come, just
agenda.
fill out a form later. It's all good.
Whoa,
Hi.
whoa, 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 whoa.
What?
Well, what was advertised for this meeting?
The superintendent search.
Okay, are they going to be speaking to the issue of the superintendent
No.
search?
They're not.
Let me be
but it
specific
is
on my request.
public
Yes.
Okay, let me be
That's-
more specific on my request. My thing was to officially put them on the agenda for the next board meeting so they can speak. That's what I'm saying. Now,
All
if
right.
that is a public comment, I mean.
So
if
you're
it's
not
Madam
asking
Chair-
them to talk tonight, you're just asking to put them on.
To put 'em
That's
on
what I'm
the
saying,
agenda.
if they talk
Okay.
tonight, we don't have it agended.
Okay, technically
they
they
don't
can
public-
speak.
yeah,
It's a
oh,
public
yeah.
comment,
Yes.
Frank, but it's fine. We'll put you guys on the next agenda.
Man.
No
That's
problem.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
They can speak.
Okay. There's nothing new.
Okay,
Technically,
are
I
we,
think
any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we're adjourned. Thank you, team.